so we're going to do, why do all recent DNA studies conclusively and without exception indicate that Native Americans are of Siberian, Asiatic, and not Hebrew or Middle Eastern origin, from the A Letter to an Apostle, done by Mr. Paul Douglas. So we're going to do that, and we're probably going to get into the next one, because I'm going to be kind of quick on this one. We're going to head probably into the next chapter also, which is on what about life 6,000 years ago and before, since the Book of Mormon tells us that there was no death into this world before the fall of Adam 6,000 years ago. So see what Mr. Paul Douglas has to say about that. As far as DNA studies go, take a quick look at it. He misses the checkmate, in my opinion. He doesn't say some of the things that I like to mention there, but let's go ahead and take a look. As a matter of fact, let's get into outer darkness here. Go to settings, just real quick here. Easier on the eyes, isn't it? Okay, so here we go. Sorry for the quick pause there, without using the pause button. As the following statements by leaders in the field indicate, based on DNA evidence alone, there is no nexus between the Middle Eastern people, in other words, the people that would have come from Jerusalem, as the Book of Mormon says, and the Aboriginal peoples of the Americas. The American Indians, Native Americans, Siberian immigrants, because they came from Siberia, not from Jerusalem. As Michael Crawford at the University of Kansas puts it, I don't think there is one iota of evidence that suggests a lost tribe from Israel made it all the way to the New World. It's a great story, slain by ugly fact. Genetic research, particularly that using mitochondrial and Y chromosome markers, provide quite an emphatic refutation of any such relationship between Jesus and the Native Americans. Alright, so he tells us a little bit about DNA and haplogroups and that sort of a thing, which basically says everything they got from 199 out of every 200 people tested in these Native American tribes. 150 Native American tribes with like over 5,000 people tested showed that they came from Siberia with the DNA. Somehow it says that these migrations occurred between 7,000 and 50,000 years ago, all of which are before any Adam and Eve story has them exiting the Garden of Eden in Jackson County, Missouri, and walking the long walk to Davies County, Missouri, so they could go to Adam-on-Diamond and offer sacrifice to the Lord. In the Joseph Smith translation, of course, of Moses. We don't find anything quite the same. Well, it's similar in Genesis. I was going to say we don't find baptism, which he does too, but we're not talking about this here. Okay, so now he mentions the essay on LDS.org just briefly, because the essay writers say, you can't depend on DNA evidence. So the DNA studies in the Book of Mormon essay, approved by the First Presidency and the Quorum of the 12, says, basic principles of population genetics suggest the need for a more careful approach to the data. The conclusions of genetics, like those of any science, are tentative, and much work remains to be done to fully understand the origins of native populations in the Americas. Nothing is known about the DNA of Book of Mormon peoples, and even if their genetic profile were known, there are still sound scientific reasons that might remain undetected. For these same reasons, that it might remain undetected. So basically they come back to the same thing they always do. In short, DNA studies, no facts can be used to decisively affirm or reject the historical authenticity of the Book of Mormon. You'll need to pray about it. And if you've got faith and are worthy, Jesus will tell you it's true, even though DNA tells you it's not true. So, if you read this, you'll find that Paul has got, quote after quote from people that actually do know what they're talking about DNA, rather than essay writers for the church who are experts in BSing us, baffling us with their BS when the facts are not in support of their story. So he goes on and lists a number of statements from various DNA experts, and none of them think that there's any reason to believe what these essay writers are saying. They pretty well think it's very conclusive. So, Fair Mormon responds to Paul's letter here. Fair Mormon says, very briefly, response to the claim of Paul saying, why do all recent DNA studies conclusively and without exception indicate that Native Americans are of Siberian, Asiatic, and not Hebrew origin? And so, the apologists at Fair Mormon say, fact-checking results. This claim contains mistakes and or errors. The author has stated erroneous or incorrect information or misinterpreted their sources. DNA evidence cannot be used to either prove or disprove the Book of Mormon. Because they said so, apparently. They don't show anything to back up their statement that it's in error. And or, what do you mean and or? Okay, so basically another sweeping generalization and accusation with zip, zero, zilch, and nada, to use some words Paul used earlier, to support what they just said. So, once again, they are men of many words and speak much flattery unto the people. They kept their words kind of short here because the more they say, just the stupider they look. All right, I'm not going to bother to read his response. What he also does mention in here is that, the church changed the preface to the Book of Mormon, which, if you've watched any of my videos on that, you would already know. Where they used to say that the American Indians were derived from, or basically that the Lamanites are the primary ancestors of the American Indians. Now it says, of course, as we know, they're among them. But they haven't been able to find any of them. But you need to have faith. They're among them somewhere. They're among them. Their DNA's lying. Satan is making their DNA lie. It is. Satan hiding their DNA. Or God doesn't want us to be able to see that it actually was true that these people were here. So he's trying our faith. As Joseph Fielding Smith might probably tell us, since he's told us other things similar to that. Yeah, in other words, when the facts don't support you, baffle them with your BS. Okay, so the checkmate for me, of course, is that when the church in the essay says, well, just look, they disappeared into an existing population. Except for the Book of Mormon says they all got, that anybody else that was living in the Americas was washed away by Noah's flood. And that Jeffrey Holland tells us that the Lord then moved the continents, divided up Pangaea so that we could have the oceans surround the place, and God could make sure nobody got to the Americas because it was his chosen land, except for people he directly brought here. So, they're contradicting Jeffrey Holland. They're contradicting the Book of Mormon. They're contradicting the Book of Mormon when they say nothing in the Book of Mormon says that they were the predominant or only people here or anything like that. But the Book of Mormon does say that the Lord protected the land from the knowledge of other nations because other nations would overrun the land, that there'd be no place for an inheritance. And he had preserved it from the knowledge of other lands so that the seed of Lehi could possess it unto themselves. Sorry, essay writers, approved by the First Presidency, you got busted lying. So watch the DNA videos on that, and I got all the documentation in there, so I'll just take a... Oh, I don't need to go over there. Well, I guess I could just hit the YouTube button, but I'm already in YouTube over there, so let's hit the pause. Alright, so I still got the reverse screen on, but here's in my playlist here, in the Dodger Game channel at least. And so we got Book of Mormon, historicity, DNA, and scientific plausibility issues. So let's click that one. It's going to look a little different since the color's reversed. But what do we have? Mormon Newsroom announces Book of Mormon movie, but DNA says it's fiction. Mormon Truth videos. Alright. Yeah, I've got so many Book of Mormon things in here. LDS Gospel Topics essay and the Book of Mormon on DNA of Siberian Lamanite issue. There we got the sheep there. 36-minute video. LDS Gospel Topic essays on race and DNA contradict the Book of Mormon cursing dark-skinned Lamanites. So anyway, I got several of those, and it's checkmate. DNA in the Book of Mormon, descendants receiving LDS patriarchal blessings, declaring Israelite lineage. Yeah, bottom line, folks, they disappeared into a population that existed in the Americas long before Adam and was not washed away by Noah's fake news flood. So it's checkmate. Either you kill the Book of Mormon or you kill the Book of Mormon and the Bible trying to save the Book of Mormon. Those people's existence in the Americas, just like the fact the Egyptians weren't wiped out, the Sumerians, Babylonians, Chinese, or anyone else by the fake news flood that we have records for civilizations going right through that time period unaffected, kills Mormonism dead, like raid does to insects. So, let's go to the next one. Alrighty. Number 5. Page 5, which is actually subject number 4, I guess, here. So, Paul says, are we to believe as Alma... Here's a mistake here, I think. It's supposed to be 1223. Forget that Alma 1 or 112. There's no Alma 1. Alma 1223 asserts, as does 2 Nephi 222. It's all about twos here on that one. Deuces are wild, as Vince Scully would say. 2 and 2 count with 2 on and 2 out in a 2-2 ball game. That there was no death of any kind on the earth before the fall of Adam, which the Doctrine and Covenants indicates was about 6,000 years ago. As in, are you kidding me? Says this guy. He looks a little older than 6,000 years old, but who knows? All right. Now he's going to start bashing people that think that the earth is flat just because they don't have to use, curved pipes, and because they know what a circle is. And, he dropped 63% for every foot of distance you go. You go 8 inches down on a circle if you're going around a perimeter from the vertical point on the top. But let's not talk about that, Paul. You were trained in that just like everything else to believe, and you haven't gotten to a few things yet. Well-established science, that we got from the Freemasons. Okay. There are few areas where there is as great a collision between higher learning and the teachings of LDS Church than the belief that there's no death on this planet before about the 6000 BC. 6,000? You mean 4000 BC, Paul? That's 6,000 years ago. He means 6,000 years ago. He doesn't mean 6,000 BC, probably 4,000. According to the Bible. Nor is there any other assertion so quickly repudiated. This indeed moves into... Okay. Actually, it doesn't, but we're not here to talk about that. The earth is very, very old, says Paul. But how old is it exactly? Okay. So he's going to talk about how long it might have taken for plants and things to develop, that kind of a thing. And he doesn't say much at all, actually, so I guess I'll read his whole spiel here. The earth is very, very old, but how old is it exactly? And how can we know with any degree of confidence? The process of scientifically estimating the age of the earth and the plants and animals that lived and died on it involves finding the oldest piece of the planet we can, and then determining how old that chunk is. For hundreds, probably thousands of years, man has unearthed fossils, the remains or impressions of a prehistoric organism preserved in petrified form, or as a mold, or cast in rock. But only in the last century has science enabled us to date these fossils accurately. So you may or may not believe in that. But he says prehistoric. What is historic? Well, historic is where we got history. There probably used to be a lot more history that we had some kind of access to before the Romans decided to wipe history out when they burned Alexandria, wiped out the library, kept a few copies of the things they wanted, just took them to the Vatican and destroyed all of our knowledge of anything before 4000 BC, anything that would contradict the narrative of the Roman Christian religion that they invented. Fair Mormon's comments on my questions on the age of the earth, says Paul. 2 Nephi asserts, as does Alma 12:23 and 24, that there was no death of any kind upon the earth before the fall of Adam, which Doctrine and Covenants says was about 6,000 years ago. There, he corrected himself. There is an overwhelming archaeological evidence of death having occurred on this earth for millions of years. For example, oil deposits are formed from the decomposed remains of ancient plants and animals. This is where church teachings appear to contradict science, since many Latter-day Saint leaders and church manuals have taught that there was no physical death on the entire earth prior to the fall of Adam. For example, this view is taught in the LDS Bible Dictionary. Latter-day Revelation teaches that there was no death on this earth for any forms of life before the fall of Adam. Indeed, death entered the world as a direct result of the fall. 2 Nephi 2:22 and Moses 6:48. This interpretation has been shared by many church authors. Interpretation? It's called reading English. I don't see. Okay, let's keep going. Including President Joseph Fielding Smith and Elder Bruce R. McConkie. Consequently, the concept of no death before the fall on the entire earth has made its way into many church instructional manuals. But we know better. Us apologists know better than the prophets, right? For example, the LDS Bible Dictionary, which was included as an addition to the LDS edition of the King James Bible in 1979, includes the following statement, that death entered the world as a result of the fall. The LDS Bible Dictionary states that latter-day revelation teaches that there was no death on this earth before the fall of Adam. Indeed, death entered the world as a direct result of the fall. Douglas's response: it's hard to defend the indefensible. I accept that this is as close Fair Mormon can come to saying, yeah, you're right, without getting a call from their masters in Salt Lake. All right. Yeah, I thought they were going to say, but we know that it's different. Yeah, they made it sound like there was some doubt the way they worded it, like they were about to say, but, and then they didn't. It's made its way into the manuals. Yeah, so the guys that say they're prophets and apostles, and Joseph Smith supposedly was a prophet, well, I guess there's a problem with that according to a lot of things. It's a problem when you look at civilizations even. Who built Göbekli Tepe? You know, how many, that was long before Adam. Yeah, sorry. Oh my. God made the earth in 5 days and rested on the 6th. No, he made man on the 6th and anesthetized him and cloned Eve and then took a rest on the Sabbath day and said, you better all worship me all day long on the Sabbath day. Makes so much sense. Should we check out one more? I've only gone 21 minutes here. What's the next one? Alright, that's what we just looked at. Come on! Maybe it's an internet connection. Let's go, come on. Numero 6. 6. Pause. You know, I think I'm just going to cut it on that one, because this one is, so much different that it's a really different subject. So, which is, how do you explain the large volume of material in the Book of Mormon lifted directly from the Bible, and the presence of numerous errors found in the Book of Mormon unique to the 1769 King James edition of the Bible, which we know Joseph owned, right? Or his family did. Yeah, and that's something that was done well in the CES letter pretty well. I think Jeremy Rennell's was pretty strong on that particular point. Anything else I wanted to say about the former issues here? Yeah, it's not just the death in the earth thing. Let me mention one other thing here, which was we also find in the Pearl of Great Price in the Moses account there, Joseph Smith redid the Bible. He says something that I don't believe was in the other Genesis, that the Great and Abominable Church supposedly took out, right? So he says that Adam was the first flesh upon the earth, the first man also. So let's add that to this issue. Adam was the first flesh on the earth. So that's even nastier than with the Catholics. The Catholics only have the regular Genesis to deal with. So they don't have to deal with that one. So they try to say, well, God didn't put a soul into the animals till Adam fell or something like that. If you watch like Catholic apologetics, they try to squirm on that. But Joseph Smith destroyed the wiggle room for the church on that issue when he said that Adam was the first flesh upon the earth of any kind. First flesh upon the earth, the first man also. So that means these Neanderthals didn't exist. Sorry, according to Joseph Smith, but unfortunately we've got fossils and we've got their DNA and people that, like live near the Pyrenees, especially, in France. And, other species of like hominids, people-ish things, that are a little bit different. So, hey, how'd you get 3 races? We've done that before, right? You've got Negroes, you've got Mongoloid race from Asia, and you got Caucasian race, and the Bible says there was a mark put on Cain. Joseph Smith elaborates on that and tells us that a veil of darkness covered Cain, and the seed of Cain were black. Doesn't tell us anything about people in Asia, and he explains the American Indians that they got cursed. So everybody started out white, and then they just got whacked if they were naughty. Yeah, it's about as good as the biblical flood stuff that came from the Epic of Gilgamesh, from the Sumerians and the creation myths that went into what the Jews adopted later, and that the Christians decided to adopt from the Jews. So it's all ridiculous. And we get started on the next one soon.